The last rays of the setting sun caught on the silver gleam of a pocket watch as Micah Garrison stepped off the dusty stagecoach in Redemption, Arizona Territory, 1878. Her green eyes surveyed the frontier town with a mixture of trepidation and determination, the weight of her circumstances heavy on her slender shoulders. Clutched in her hand was a folded telegram and a deed to a property she'd never seen the price of her father's gambling debts. The driver tossed down her single trunk, stirring dust that coated her already travel-worn skirts. "Welcome to Redemption, miss," he said with a tip of his hat. "Though folks round here might not be too welcoming when they hear your name." Micah's chin lifted, her auburn hair falling from beneath her modest bonnet. "My father's reputation is not mine to bear," she said, though the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. In a town where grudges ran as deep as the nearby silver mines, being James Garrison's daughter was burden enough. "Miss Garrison," a rotund man with a sweaty face approached, his mustache quivering with each labored breath. "Hiram Potts, bank manager." "I'm afraid there's been a change in our arrangement." Micah stiffened. "Sir, I have the deed right here. The property is still yours, technically." Potts dabbed at his forehead with a handkerchief. "But your father's debts have been purchased by a new party. You'll need to discuss terms with the new holder." "What new holder?" Micah demanded, fear gripping her heart. She'd come west with the promise that working the small ranch would settle all debts. The telegram stated clearly, "That was before Tucker Sterling rode into town 3 days ago," Potts replied, already backing away as if afraid to be the bearer of such news. "You'll find him at the Silver Dollar. Good day, Miss Garrison." Before Micah could protest further, Potts had disappeared into the crowd. Alone on the boardwalk with her trunk and fading hope, she squared her shoulders and asked directions to the Silver Dollar Saloon. The establishment was exactly what she expected, a den of smoke, whiskey, and men whose eyes followed her entrance with interest that made her skin crawl. A piano played in the corner, almost drowning out the coarse laughter and clinking glasses. "I'm looking for Tucker Sterling," she announced to the barkeep, her voice steadier than her nerves. The piano fell silent. Conversations halted, and from a corner table, a man rose to his full height, well over 6 feet of solid, sun-bronzed cowboy. His dark hair fell just above his collar, and a neatly trimmed beard framed a face that might have been handsome if not for the hard set of his jaw and the cold calculation in his blue eyes. "You found him," he said, his voice a low rumble that carried across the suddenly quiet room. "And who might you be, miss?" "Micah Garrison," she replied, refusing to wilt under his intense gaze. "I understand you've purchased my father's debts." A murmur went through the saloon. Several men shifted uncomfortably. One whispered something that sounded like "bargained for," causing another to chuckle darkly. Sterling's expression didn't change as he gestured to the empty chair across from him. "We have business to discuss, Miss Garrison." Micah hesitated, aware of the impropriety but seeing little choice. With deliberate dignity, she crossed the room and took the offered seat, her back straight as a ramrod. "Mr. Potts informed me that our arrangement has changed. I came to work the land my father deeded to me. That was to clear all debts." Sterling studied her for a long moment. "Your father lost more than that piece of land in his last game in my establishment back in St. Louis. When I learned he'd fled west, leaving his only daughter to clean up his mess, I decided to follow. Interesting man, your father." "My father is dead, Mr. Sterling," Micah said flatly. "Pneumonia took him 2 months ago." Something flickered across Sterling's face, surprise, perhaps even a hint of regret, before the mask of indifference returned. "My condolences. However, the debt remains." "How much?" Micah asked, her throat tight. Sterling leaned back in his chair. $2,000. The figure hit her like a physical blow. It might as well have been 2 million. That's impossible. I don't have that kind of money. I'm aware, he replied, signaling the barkeep for 2 drinks. Which is why I'm prepared to offer you an alternative. Micah's heart raced. She'd heard stories of women in her position being forced into saloon work or worse. I will not compromise my virtue, sir. A genuine look of offense crossed Sterling's face. I'm a businessman, Miss Garrison, not a monster. The property your father left you borders my ranch. I need the water rights. Work for me for 1 year as my housekeeper, and I'll consider the debt paid. The whiskey arrived. Micah ignored hers. Housekeeper. My ranch house needs a woman's touch. Cooking, cleaning, basic household management. Nothing more. His blue eyes held hers. Do we have a deal? Micah's mind raced. A year of service to pay off her father's debts seemed fair, even generous. Yet something in Sterling's demeanor made her wary. How do I know I can trust you? For the first time, a smile touched his lips, transforming his face. You don't. Just as I don't know if I can trust that you won't run off in the night. We'll both have to take a chance. From another table, a grizzled miner called out, He's buying himself a bride, boys. Laughter erupted. Sterling's smile vanished. He rose with lethal grace, turning to face the room. The next man who disrespects Miss Garrison answers to me. She's not property to be bargained for. Are we clear? The silence that followed was absolute. The miner nodded hastily, and conversation slowly resumed. Sterling turned back to Micah. Do we have a deal, Miss Garrison? With few options and even less money, Micah extended her hand. We have a deal, Mr. Sterling. His large hand engulfed hers, warm and calloused. Tucker, he corrected. If we're to live under the same roof, we might as well use Christian names. Micah, then, she replied, withdrawing her hand and wondering if she just made the biggest mistake of her life. The Sterling ranch sprawled across the foothills of the mountains, a magnificent spread that took Micah's breath away as Tucker's wagon crested the final hill. The main house was larger than she'd expected, a 2-story structure of sturdy logs and stone that spoke of prosperity and permanence. It's beautiful, she murmured, genuinely impressed. My father's dream, Tucker replied, his voice softening with rare emotion. He came west with nothing but determination, built all this from the ground up. And now it's yours, Micah observed. Tucker's hands tightened on the reins. At a cost. Pa died defending this land from cattle rustlers 5 years ago. Ma couldn't bear to stay after. She's back east with my sister now. I'm sorry, Micah said, surprised by the glimpse of vulnerability. As they approached the house, a wizened Mexican man emerged, followed by a younger man who bore a striking resemblance to him. Caesar, Tucker called in greeting. Miss Garrison will be staying with us. She's our new housekeeper. The older man's weathered face creased in a smile. Bienvenida, señorita. I am Caesar Mendoza, foreman. This is my son, Luis. Luis tipped his hat, his dark eyes curious but respectful. Welcome to Sterling Ranch, miss. Thank you, Micah replied, accepting Tucker's hand to descend from the wagon. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her, which she attributed to simple gratitude for the assistance. The interior of the ranch house was spacious but Spartan. Beautiful wooden furniture sat alongside bare walls and empty corners. The kitchen was well appointed but showed signs of masculine neglect, clean but utilitarian, without the touches that made a house a home. Your room is upstairs, first door on the right, Tucker explained, carrying her trunk as if it weighed nothing. Mine is at the opposite end of the hall. There are 2 guest rooms between. You'll have your privacy. Micah followed him up the stairs, taking in her surroundings. How many hands do you employ? 15 regular, more during roundup and branding. They have bunkhouses near the corrals. Tucker set her trunk down in a surprisingly pleasant bedroom with a large window overlooking the mountains. Caesar's wife, Elena, comes up to help with laundry once a week. Otherwise, the household is yours to manage. Micah nodded, already cataloging the tasks ahead. And your expectations for meals? Breakfast at sunrise, dinner at sunset. Lunch is usually wherever the work takes us. Tucker paused at the door. I don't expect fancy, Miss Garrison. Just honest food and a clean house. I can provide both, she assured him, though her cooking skills were rudimentary at best. Tucker studied her for a moment longer than necessary, something unreadable in his eyes. Get settled. Dinner's in an hour. He closed the door behind him, leaving Micah alone with her thoughts. She sank onto the bed, the reality of her situation settling over her like a heavy blanket. For the next year, she would be living under the roof of a man she hardly knew, working to pay off her father's debts. The arrangement was both a relief and a new kind of prison. Yet as she unpacked her meager belongings, Micah found herself drawn to the window and the breathtaking landscape beyond. For the first time since her father's death, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps here, in this wild, beautiful place, she could finally build something of her own. By the end of her first week at Sterling Ranch, Micah had established a rhythm. Rising before dawn, she prepared breakfast for Tucker and any hands who happened to be in the main house. The days were filled with cleaning, mending, and learning to cook from Elena Mendoza's patient instruction. Evenings brought dinner with Tucker, their conversations gradually evolving from awkward silence to cautious exchanges about the ranch, the town, and occasionally, their pasts. Tucker, she discovered, was a complex man. Hard and demanding with his workers, yet fair. Reserved to the point of aloofness, yet capable of unexpected kindness. She'd seen him lift a fallen calf with gentle hands, watched him sit for hours with a sick horse, noted how he always ensured his men ate before he did. On Sunday morning, Micah was surprised to find Tucker waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in his finest clothes. I thought you might like to attend church in town, he said, something almost shy in his manner. Caesar can drive us if you'd prefer not to ride with me alone. Touched by his concern for her reputation, Micah smiled. That's considerate but unnecessary. I trust you, Tucker. The words seemed to affect him more than she'd expected. His eyes, usually so guarded, warmed. That means something coming from you. The ride to town was pleasant, the early summer morning filled with wildflowers and birdsong. Tucker pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area's history, revealing a depth of knowledge that impressed Micah. You love this land, she observed as they approached the outskirts of Redemption. Tucker nodded, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. It gets in your blood. The freedom, the challenges, even the dangers, they become part of who you are. I think I understand, Micah replied softly. I've only been here a week, but already the East seems confining by comparison. Tucker glanced at her with new interest. Most Eastern ladies find frontier life barbaric. Perhaps I'm not most ladies, Micah said with a smile. Something shifted in Tucker's expression, a softening, an awakening of interest that made Micah suddenly conscious of how close they sat on the wagon bench, of the strength in his hands as he held the reins, of the clean scent of soap and leather that surrounded him. The moment shattered as they entered town. Eyes turned their way, whispers following their progress down the main street. Micah held her head high, but she felt the sting of every curious stare. At the church steps, a group of women fell silent as they approached. One, a blonde beauty in an expensive dress, stepped forward with a brittle smile. Tucker Sterling, what a surprise to see you in town. Her gaze slid to Micah, assessing and dismissive. And with company, no less. Miss Harrington, Tucker nodded politely but coolly. "This is Miss Micah Garrison, my new housekeeper." The blonde's smile sharpened. "Housekeeper? How convenient." Micah felt Tucker tense beside her. Before he could respond, she extended her hand. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Harrington. Are you new to redemption as well?" The woman blinked, clearly not expecting such direct engagement. "Hardly. My father owns the largest mercantile in town. We've been here since the beginning." "How fortunate for you to have such roots," Micah replied pleasantly. "I hope to establish my own in time." Tucker's hand came to rest lightly at the small of Micah's back, guiding her up the church steps. "We should find seats," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Inside, they settled into a pew near the back. As the congregation filed in, Micah noticed the curious glances, the whispered comments. "They're talking about me," she whispered to Tucker. His jaw tightened. "They're speculating about us. Small towns run on gossip." "What exactly are they saying?" Tucker hesitated. "That I bought your father's debts to gain leverage over you. That you're working off your obligation in ways that aren't entirely respectable." Anger flared in Micah's chest. "That's outrageous." "It's predictable," Tucker countered. "An unmarried woman living in a bachelor's home invites speculation." Before Micah could respond, the service began. Throughout the sermon, she found it difficult to concentrate, acutely aware of Tucker beside her, of the occasional glances from the congregation, of Miss Harrington's pointed stare from across the aisle. After the service, several people approached to introduce themselves. Some were genuinely welcoming. Others barely disguised their curiosity and judgment. The most unexpected encounter came as they prepared to leave. An elderly woman with kind eyes took Micah's hands in hers. "I'm Martha Wilson, dear. My late husband was the town's first sheriff." "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Wilson," Micah replied. The old woman's gaze shifted to Tucker. "This young man's father saved my Jacob's life during an Apache raid. Sterling men have always been honorable." Her attention returned to Micah. "Don't you mind the gossips, child? Some folks can't see past their own assumptions." Tucker tipped his hat respectfully. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson." As they drove back to the ranch, a comfortable silence settled between them. Finally, Tucker spoke. "I apologize for subjecting you to that." Micah shook her head. "People will talk regardless. I've endured worse since my father's difficulties became known." Tucker's hands tightened on the reins. "Your father left you in an impossible position." "He was not a bad man," Micah defended automatically, though the words lacked conviction. "Just weak where gambling was concerned." "A weakness that cost you everything," Tucker observed, his voice gentle rather than accusatory. Micah looked away, blinking back unexpected tears. "Not everything. I still have my pride, my abilities. And now, a chance to start anew." Tucker's gaze lingered on her profile. "You're an unusual woman, Micah Garrison. Is that a compliment, Mr. Sterling?" she asked, finding her composure. His smile was slow, transforming his face. "Decidedly so." The wagon hit a rut, jolting them closer together. For a breath, their shoulders touched, and Micah felt a spark of connection that both thrilled and frightened her. Tucker seemed to feel it too, his eyes darkening before he deliberately shifted away, maintaining a proper distance. But something had changed between them, a shift as subtle as the changing seasons yet as undeniable as the turning earth. Summer deepened, bringing scorching days and brief, violent thunderstorms. Micah settled into ranch life with surprising ease, finding satisfaction in creating order from chaos, in transforming the sterile house into a home. She hung curtains, arranged wildflowers in mason jars, planted an herb garden outside the kitchen door. Tucker noticed every change, sometimes offering a nod of approval, occasionally expressing surprise at the difference a small touch could make. They fell into a comfortable routine, their evenings often spent on the front porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson. One such evening, almost 2 months after her arrival, Tucker returned from a 3-day cattle drive, dusty and exhausted but pleased with the outcome. "The Army contract is secure," he announced over dinner. "It's enough to see us through winter with some to spare." Micah smiled, serving him a second helping of stew. "That's wonderful news. You've worked hard for it." Tucker caught her hand as she turned away, the contact sending warmth up her arm. "We've worked hard. The men notice the difference, you know. Hot meals, clean clothes, a place that feels like home when they come in from the range." Micah felt a blush rising in her cheeks. "I'm merely fulfilling our arrangement." Tucker held her gaze. "You've done far more than that." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Tucker released her hand, clearing his throat. "I brought something for you from town." Surprised, Micah watched as he retrieved a package from his saddlebag. "You didn't need to bring me anything. It's nothing fancy," he said, suddenly looking almost shy. "Just saw it and thought of you." Micah unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a beautiful leather-bound journal and a fountain pen. The cover was tooled with delicate flowers, the pages cream-colored and thick. "For your stories," Tucker explained. "I've seen you writing on scraps of paper in the evenings. Thought you might like something proper." Touched beyond measure, Micah ran her fingers over the soft leather. "It's beautiful, Tucker. Thank you." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "You're welcome." Later that night, after Tucker had retired, Micah sat at the kitchen table with her new journal. She began to write, not one of her usual stories, but the confusing emotions that had begun to take root in her heart. Feelings for a man she had no business caring for, a man who held her future in his hands through a business arrangement. A week later, disaster struck. Micah was baking bread when Luis burst into the kitchen, his face pale beneath his tan. "Fire in the south pasture. Tucker says to prepare the house. The men might need treatment if it spreads." Heart racing, Micah gathered medical supplies, filled buckets with water, and tore clean sheets into bandages. From the porch, she could see the column of smoke rising above the distant trees. For hours, she waited, fear gnawing at her insides. When the men finally returned, they were exhausted, smoke-blackened, but largely uninjured. Tucker was the last to arrive, his shirt singed, a nasty burn on his forearm. Micah rushed to him, guiding him to a chair. "You should have come back sooner," she scolded, gently cleaning the wound. "Couldn't," he replied, wincing as she applied salve. "Had to make sure the fire line held." "At the expense of your own safety?" Micah's voice caught. "What good is saved pastureland if you're not here to work it?" Tucker's eyes met hers, something vulnerable surfacing in their blue depths. "You were worried about me." It wasn't a question, but Micah answered anyway. "Of course I was worried." She hesitated, then finished softly, "I care about what happens to you." Tucker's uninjured hand came up to touch her cheek, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. "That works out well, then," he murmured, "because I find myself caring a great deal about what happens to you." The confession hung between them, honest and fraught with complications. Micah finished bandaging his arm in silence, her thoughts tumultuous. That night, sleep eluded her. The nature of their arrangement haunted her. How could she trust her feelings or his when her presence in his home was the result of a debt? Was she developing genuine affection, or merely Stockholm sympathies for the man who controlled her fate? Morning brought no clarity, but it did bring visitors. Caesar announced that Leland Harrington and his daughter, Vivian the blonde from church had arrived to discuss business. Micah served coffee in the parlor, acutely aware of Vivian's assessing gaze. The woman was undeniably beautiful, her golden hair arranged in an elaborate style, her dress the latest fashion from back east. "Tucker, darling, you simply must attend the Founders' Day dance next week," Vivian said, her voice a practiced melody. "Father's hosting at the hotel. Everyone who's anyone will be there." Tucker shifted uncomfortably. "I appreciate the invitation, but I insist," Vivian continued, laying a gloved hand on his arm. "You spend too much time out here with your staff." Her gaze flicked dismissively to Micah. "A man of your position should socialize more." Leland Harrington nodded in agreement. "Indeed, Sterling. Been meaning to discuss some business opportunities with you." The dance would be an excellent occasion. Trapped, Tucker gave a reluctant nod. "Very well. I'll make an appearance." Vivian's smile was triumphant. "Wonderful. I've saved you a dance already." After they departed, an awkward silence fell. Micah busied herself clearing the coffee service, her movements perhaps more forceful than necessary. "Micah," Tucker began, his voice hesitant. "About the dance, you don't owe me any explanations, Mr. Sterling," Micah interrupted, reverting to formality. "Your social engagements are your own affair." Tucker's expression hardened slightly. "I was going to ask if you'd like to attend as well." Micah nearly dropped the tray. "Me? At the Founders' Day dance? Why not?" Tucker challenged. "You're a resident of Redemption now." "I'm your housekeeper," Micah reminded him. "Paid through an arrangement to settle a debt. Hardly the sort of companion a man of your position should escort to a society event." Tucker crossed the room in 3 strides, taking the tray from her hands and setting it aside. "Is that how you still see yourself? As nothing more than a servant working off a debt?" Micah met his gaze squarely. "It's the truth, isn't it? Without our arrangement, I'd have nothing, no home, no prospects. And without you," Tucker countered, "I'd have a house, not a home, land, but no one to share it with, wealth, but not the things that truly matter." His words stole her breath. "Tucker, come to the dance with me," he said, his voice low and earnest. "Not as my housekeeper, as my guest, my friend." His eyes held hers, communicating something deeper he wasn't yet ready to voice. Micah's resolve wavered. "People will talk. People always talk," Tucker replied with a half-smile. "Let's give them something worth talking about." The week leading up to the dance passed in a flurry of preparation. Elena Mendoza helped Micah alter one of her better dresses, adding lace from Elena's own wedding gown to the collar and cuffs. They couldn't match Vivian Harrington's finery, but the result was elegant in its simplicity. On the evening of the dance, Micah descended the stairs to find Tucker waiting in the foyer. He wore a black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, his dark hair neatly combed, his beard trimmed. He looked up as she approached, and the naked admiration in his eyes made her heart flutter. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Micah replied, suddenly shy. "You look quite handsome yourself." The ride to town was filled with a charged awareness. Tucker's hand brushed hers as he helped her into the wagon, and the simple contact sent sparks along her skin. They spoke of inconsequential things: the weather, the upcoming harvest, the new foal born in the stables, but beneath the ordinary conversation ran a current of anticipation. The Redemption Hotel had been transformed for the occasion. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the crowded ballroom. A small orchestra played in the corner, and couples swirled across the floor in colorful patterns. Their entrance caused a momentary lull in conversation. Micah held her head high, acutely aware of Tucker's hand at the small of her back, a gesture both protective and possessive. Vivian Harrington approached immediately, her smile brittle. "Tucker, darling, I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." Her gaze slid to Micah with undisguised disapproval. "How democratic of you to bring your staff." Before Tucker could respond, Martha Wilson appeared at their side. "Micah, dear, how lovely to see you. And looking so beautiful, too." The elderly woman shot Vivian a pointed look. "Some of us remember when redemption welcomed everyone, regardless of circumstance. The Founders' Day dance is for the whole community, after all." Vivian's lips thinned, but she managed a tight smile. "Of course. How quaint. Tucker, you promised me a dance." Tucker's hand remained steady at Micah's back. "Later, perhaps, Miss Harrington. I believe the first dance belongs to my companion." As Vivian stalked away, Martha winked at Micah. "Brave girl. You've certainly stirred things up around here." The music changed to a waltz. Tucker turned to Micah, extending his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Garrison?" Micah placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her onto the floor. "I should warn you, I'm not very practiced at waltzing." Tucker's smile was warm as he drew her into his arms. "Just follow my lead." And she did, finding it surprisingly easy to move with him. His hand was firm at her waist, guiding her through the steps with confidence. They moved together as if they'd danced 100 times before, and Micah found herself lost in the music, in his eyes, in the feeling of rightness that enveloped her. "People are staring," she murmured, though she couldn't bring herself to care. "Let them," Tucker replied, pulling her a fraction closer than propriety allowed. "I only see you." The dance ended too soon. As they parted, Leland Harrington approached, insisting on a word with Tucker about business. With a reluctant apology, Tucker followed the merchant to a corner of the room. Left alone, Micah found a quiet spot near the refreshment table. She was observing the dancers when a voice spoke from behind her. "So you're the one they're calling bargained for?" a man said, his tone unpleasantly familiar. Micah turned to find herself facing 3 men, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and something darker. The speaker was vaguely familiar, one of the miners from the saloon on her first day in town. "I beg your pardon?" she replied coldly. The miner smirked. "Word is Sterling bought your father's debts to get himself a pretty housekeeper. Some bargain, I'd say." "You're mistaken, sir," Micah said, looking for a way to extricate herself. The man stepped closer, blocking her path. "Am I? Everyone knows Sterling's been looking for a wife. Seems he found a way to try before he buys." Anger flared in Micah's chest. "You will step aside now." "Or what?" the miner challenged. "You'll call your owner? That's what he is, isn't he? Owns your debt, owns your time, probably owns more than that by now." "Finish that sentence," came Tucker's voice, deadly quiet. "And it'll be the last thing you say with all your teeth intact." The miner turned, paling as he found Tucker looming behind him. "Was just having a friendly conversation, Sterling." "There's nothing friendly about insulting a lady," Tucker replied, his hand resting casually near his gun. "Apologize to Miss Garrison. Now." The miner mumbled something that might have been an apology, then slunk away with his companions. Tucker's eyes searched Micah's face. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she said, though she was shaken. "It's nothing I haven't heard whispered before." "It's unacceptable," Tucker growled, his anger palpable. "No one speaks about you that way." "They call me bargained for," Micah said quietly. "As if I'm property." Tucker's expression softened, pain replacing anger. "Micah, I never meant—" "I know," she interrupted, "but perhaps they're right. Perhaps this arrangement was a mistake. I'm grateful for your protection, your kindness, but—" She took a steadying breath. How can we ever be equals when my presence in your home, in your life, is the result of a transaction? Tucker looked stricken. Is that how you see it still? After all these months? How can I not? Micah countered. The fact remains I work for you to pay a debt. Any feelings that develop between us are compromised by that reality. Before Tucker could respond, the orchestra began a new song, and Vivian appeared, claiming her promised dance. With an apologetic glance at Micah, Tucker allowed himself to be led away. Micah watched them join the dancers, Vivian pressing herself inappropriately close, her golden head bent toward Tucker as she spoke. Whatever she was saying made Tucker's expression darken. He stopped abruptly in the middle of the floor, said something to Vivian that made her face flush with anger, then strode back toward Micah with determination. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Tucker reached Micah, took her hand, and without a word, led her through the doors and onto the hotel's veranda. In the moonlight, his face was a study in conflicting emotions. I need to tell you something about your father's debt. Micah tensed. What about it? Tucker ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it. There was a debt initially. Your father lost heavily at my establishment in St. Louis. But I never intended to collect from you. Confusion replaced Micah's apprehension. I don't understand. I came to redemption because I'd heard about you, Tucker admitted. After your father died, word spread about his daughter who was headed west alone to work a worthless piece of land. I was curious. Curious, Micah repeated, trying to process his words. Tucker stepped closer. The debt was real, but I considered it settled when I bought the note. The arrangement I proposed. It was selfish. I wanted you to stay, to have a reason to remain at Sterling Ranch. Why? Micah demanded, emotions warring within her. Because from the moment you walked into that saloon, head held high despite everything, I knew you were someone extraordinary, Tucker said softly. I wanted the chance to know you. The arrangement gave us both a reason to stay, to learn about each other without the pressures of courtship. Micah's mind reeled. So there's no debt? I've been free to leave all along. Yes, Tucker admitted, looking ashamed. I should have told you sooner, but I feared you'd go. And then, as time passed, I didn't know how to confess without making you believe everything between us was built on deception. Wasn't it? Micah challenged, though without real heat. Tucker took her hands in his. The arrangement may have begun with deception, but everything that grew between us is real. At least it is for me. Micah searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity. I should be angry. You have every right to be, Tucker agreed. I should leave. I won't stop you. Micah's heart pounded in her chest. But if I stay, it would be my choice, not out of obligation. Hope bloomed in Tucker's eyes. Completely your choice. The realization was liberating. All these months, she'd questioned her feelings, wondered if they were genuine or a response to her circumstances. Now, knowing she was free, Micah could finally acknowledge the truth in her heart. I think, she said carefully, I would like to stay, not as your housekeeper fulfilling an arrangement, but as what? Tucker prompted when she hesitated. Micah met his gaze. As a woman who cares deeply for the man you are. The man who treats his workers with respect, who risks himself to save his land, who notices when I change the curtains or plant flowers by the door. Tucker's smile was radiant. He drew her closer, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. I love you, Micah Garrison, not as property to be bargained for, not as an employee or an obligation. I love you as the remarkable woman you are. From inside, they could hear the music continuing, the sounds of laughter and conversation. But here, in their private moment under the stars, something more important was unfolding. I love you too, Micah whispered, the words both terrifying and exhilarating. Despite all the complications, despite the gossip. I love you, Tucker Sterling. His kiss was gentle at first, a question she answered by rising on her toes to deepen it. His arms encircled her, drawing her against his solid warmth, and Micah felt she had finally, truly come home. A throat cleared nearby. They broke apart to find Martha Wilson standing in the doorway, her eyes twinkling. Well, it's about time, the elderly woman declared. Now come back inside, you two. Give these gossips something real to talk about. Hand in hand, they returned to the ballroom. Conversations faltered as they entered, but neither cared. Tucker led Micah straight to the center of the floor as the orchestra began a new waltz. They're still whispering, Micah noted as they began to dance. Still calling me bargained for. Tucker's arms tightened around her. Let them talk. I know the truth, and so do you. From across the room, someone called out, How much did you pay for that one, Sterling? Before Micah could react, Tucker stopped dancing. His voice, when he spoke, carried clearly through the suddenly silent room. They call her bargained for, he announced, his gaze never leaving Micah's face. But I say she's priceless to me. The declaration hung in the air. Then, slowly, Martha Wilson began to applaud. Others joined, until the room filled with approval not universal, but enough. Priceless, Tucker repeated softly, for Micah alone. And if you'll have me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving it. 6 months later, on a crisp winter morning, Micah Garrison became Micah Sterling in the same church where they'd first sparked rumors. The whispers had gradually changed over time, transforming from scandal to romance, as the town witnessed their growing devotion. Tucker had officially torn up the debt note in front of witnesses at their engagement party, publicly acknowledging that Micah had never truly been bound to him by obligation. The gesture silenced many critics and transformed bargained for from an insult to the beginning of a love story that would be told in redemption for generations. As they drove away from the church, husband and wife at last, Tucker turned to Micah with a smile that still made her heart race. Happy, Mrs. Sterling? Micah leaned into his embrace, watching the winter sun glitter on the distant mountains that had become her home. Completely, Mr. Sterling. It turns out some bargains are worth more than gold. Tucker's laugh warmed her more than the buffalo robes tucked around them. I'd say we both got the better end of this deal. And as Sterling Ranch appeared on the horizon, Micah knew with absolute certainty that some debts, once paid with love, yielded the richest rewards of all.